So to help us learn a bit more about Operation Victory Wellness, we are joined by Major General D.A. Sims, the 1st Infantry Division Commanding General. Hi, sir. Thanks for taking the time to talk with me today.
Hi, Ashley. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we know that this campaign is designed to build stronger, more resilient individuals and teams. But can you talk about how you're doing that? And I know that there are 4 different components to Victory Wellness, right?
Yeah, that's right. Just like you said, I would tell you the whole reason for doing this, and we started about 16 months ago. The whole reason for doing this is to make our people stronger and more resilient, and then to make the organization at different echelons much more cohesive. With the thought, and just to be real, selfish here, in the end, it's about combat readiness, right? It's about ensuring that we are operationally ready to fight, with the thought that if you have strong individuals and you have strong, coherent organizations that are well trained, there's nobody that can top it, nobody that can beat them. And so when we started it 16 months ago, we've got 4 aspects or 4 components to it. One is, and I'll come back to each one of them. You shut me up if I need to shut up.
You're good, sir.
But one of them are what we call Victory Wellness Mornings. Those are Tuesday morning resilience sessions, and I'll talk more about that. The other is we seized on foundational readiness days from ForceCom. And so one is, we add Victory Wellness to it, but a Victory Wellness Foundational Day, so once a month. And then the Victory Wellness Action Week, which really combines what we do on both those Tuesday and Friday sessions. We combine it into a full week. And then the final things are wellness checks. 30 to 60-minute counseling sessions that every individual in uniform is going through. The requirement is to complete 1 per year, and we've done around 13,000 of those so far.
That's amazing.
But I'm happy to talk about each one of those. I would tell you that the crux of this was about how to, again, if you go back to individuals who are strong and resilient and teams that are strong, we really get that with our Victory Wellness Mornings, where we concentrate on the individual. And then on those foundational days where we concentrate on the team, on building the team. And I'm happy to talk about any of those 4 in greater depth as we go along.
Yeah, so I do want to talk more about that. But can we start with, like, what was the catalyst to this? Why Victory Wellness? What was why did you start? So
I would tell you personal failure. And failure is the wrong word. Personal experience. As a and this story, if I tell the whole story, it will take up the entirety of your podcast. But the bottom line is, I came back from my first combat deployment, and I went to Special Operations Command. It had been a pretty significant deployment. I was a major at the time in northern Iraq. Came back, and I was in Florida at SOCOM. And in Florida, nobody does their own yard work. Everybody has a landscaper. But I did my own yard work. It's the only thing I can actually do that I see accomplishment at. And across the street, I had a couple that lived across the street, Tony and Nadine, and they did too. Well, on Saturdays, we do our yards, and then we'd end up drinking a beer and talking. And Nadine happened to be a professor at the University of South Florida who concentrated on post-traumatic stress disorder.
Oh, wow.
And so I had just come back from Iraq, and we would talk about this. And I'd say, Nadine, I don't get it. I said, I go into a room, somebody goes into the room with me, we see the exact same thing, and somehow we have a different reaction to that. I said, it doesn't make any sense to me. I said, it's got to be weakness. And, in the end, I said, I think it's weakness. And she'd say, well, you're an idiot. And then she would tell me, why, things happen. And that for 2.5 years, it was like that. It would always end up, you're an idiot. And so I go off and I command a battalion, and I go to Afghanistan with the battalion. Like others, tough deployment, not as tough as some, and tougher than others. But I leave from my command on the 27th of July, and I report in for a War College Fellowship at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Boston on the 29th of July. And I go from this group of men and women who I had been extraordinarily tight with for a year-long combat deployment. And now I'm in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is the literal opposite of where I had been 2 days prior.
Sure.
And it did not sit well with me. I didn't react well to it. So in November of that year, I'm at a swimming event with my wife, our daughters in swim lessons, and we're sitting at a table on the pool deck, and we're talking, and I said something, and my wife said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" And she goes, "Well, the way you just said what you said was a little off, and you're about 6 months post deployment. Maybe something's going on. Maybe you need to talk to somebody." And I said, "Faye, I don't need to talk to anybody. I'm fine." So a week later, I take the Army's post-deployment health reassessment, the thing that we typically check no on all the questions that they ask us. Because if you check yes on anything, someone's going to come and talk to you. This time I actually read the questions, and I was like, wow, some of these apply to me. So another week later, so 3 weeks in a row, I'm having dinner with a good friend of mine who commanded a battalion at the same time. He was in Iraq while I was in Afghanistan. And we're talking about this. And he says, well, I went to see a counselor through Military One Source. And I said, what? And he said, yeah. He said at the time it was 10 free sessions. And, he talked about how much it helped him. And so I started thinking about these three occurrences. And I'm talking to this friend of mine who, I'd known for 20 years. And I was like, gosh, if he could do it, why wouldn't I try it? And, the long story longer is that's exactly what I did. I ended up going to counseling for the first time, and I found it to be incredibly helpful. So I started thinking then about these conversations I'd had with Nadine. And I thought, gosh, here I am, a senior lieutenant colonel. I've got a lot of real good things going on in my life. My family is strong. I come from a good background education-wise. I'm not wanting for anything. If I'm having, things that I need to talk to somebody about, why wouldn't Staff Sergeant Sims or Lieutenant Sims, why wouldn't they also have things they might want to talk about? And so I was at MIT, great professors, and my advisor, she says, hey, maybe you ought to research and write on this. And so I did a ton of research. I went down, I met with the Army's Comprehensive Soldier and Family Fitness lead and with their director, and I'm telling him the same story. And he says, well, let me show you a chart. And he shows me this chart, and it talks about, there's a picture of a person, a little stick figure, and there's this dotted line coming out from across the page. And he says, this is every individual. And he said, this line is that individual's base level of resilience. Your line and my line are different levels of resilience. And they're based on, and there's a cloud above this guy, and it's socioeconomic status, spirituality, family support structure, education, all these things that I, over time had come to mean a lot. And he says, what the problem is, our level of resilience, when we encounter a stressor, that level of resilience is either able to withstand, the stressor or not.
Right.
If it is, it actually makes us stronger. And it makes a lot of sense if you think about it. You go through a stressful event. If you get through the event, you have that experience and you have more confidence and you understand you can do it, and it increases your level of resilience. On the other hand, if you don't, it can be debilitating. And to help you after then may take things like counseling to help strengthen you again.
Sure.
What the Army was doing at the time is they were trying to increase your level of resilience before that stressor. So we still do this with our master resilience training. We work to increase our resilience so that we encounter that stressor, we're actually stronger. Right. So this is a long story. I told you it was a long story actually.
It's okay.
When I got to, I went into brigade command right after that, and I went back to the same unit I had been a battalion commander in, and we were getting ready to go to Afghanistan. And I assumed command, and we were leaving in 6 months. And I told my battalion commanders, I said, hey, listen, we're gonna do some things a little different. I said, tactically, and I don't want this to sound vain, but I wasn't overly. That's my watch. I wasn't overly concerned with deploying and fighting the regiment in combat. I had battalion commanders that I really trusted to be able to train us really at the tactical level, and I was certainly involved in that. But what I said I want to focus on is I want to focus on the overall wellness of the regiment. And so one of the things I had talked about was, listen, we spend every morning doing physical training. It's sacrosanct, and it should be, right? Our physical fitness is critical to what we do. And so every morning we work on our physical fitness. But when you think about the hard things that we go through in life, the really tough things, in combat, out of combat, wherever, our physical fitness gets us to a point. But in the end, it's not our physical fitness that gets us through the toughest thing.
Sure.
And I use this all the time. I use the comparison. I talk about 12-mile foot march, which honestly is not a very hard thing. But in a 12-mile foot march, if my battle buddy and I are in the same platoon and we do PT together every day and we're in good shape, why is it that he makes it across the 12-mile foot march and I stop at mile 8? It can't be physical fitness, because I just said we're both physically fit.
Right.
It's because in my mind, in my heart, somehow I didn't have what it took to get me across that 12-mile. At mile 6, I start telling myself, man, this ruck is heavy. At mile 7, boy, my feet are burning. And at mile 8, I'm sitting on the side of the road waiting on the Humvee to pick me up and bring me in. Well, if we know that it isn't just our physical fitness that's so critical to us accomplishing the toughest things, we take one part of every day and we work on our physical fitness. Why wouldn't we take some time during 30 days in a month to work on our, other aspects of fitness? So,
Absolutely.
what the Army defined initially as the 5 pillars of strength. You've got physical, but then you got emotional, family, spiritual, and social. Why wouldn't we work on those other pillars of strength as well? And so I told the battalion commanders, hey, listen, I don't want to add something else on to what is already a very busy period for us as we get ready to go to combat. So I'm going to take something away. And the thing I'm going to take away is every 10th morning, I'm taking a PT session away from you. And we're going to take 90 minutes instead of doing physical fitness, and we're going to work on the other aspects of fitness. And so and then I said, listen, I know that our company commanders didn't go to wellness class, right? We don't teach that at the career course. We don't teach that in the basic course. So I want to create a book that allows company commanders to, number one, understand what we're trying to do, and then number two, to have resources in the book so when they look at their training schedules and they know that, hey, I've got a wellness period coming up, 10 days, in the 10-day period, they can go, hey, we need to work on, because we're getting ready to deploy, or because we've got problems with domestic violence, or whatever it is, we need to work on this dimension of strength. And they opened up the book and it would tell them the different resources that they could call to set up for that 90-minute session, that dimension of strength, they could work on it. So we started doing that. And we every 10th day, and man, people fought me on it. And, as you might imagine, right? I mean, you take away a day of PT, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's how important it was to me that we would get rid of one day of PT to work on this. So we did it. And then we went to combat, we continued to do it. And the other thing we did was we incorporated the master resiliency modules into our daily or our monthly training. And so even in Afghanistan, we trained with that. And then the last thing we did when we were there was, my experience was when we redeploy in the Army, we do a really good job and we tell people, listen, everybody is touched by a behavioral health counselor. Every person is touched by a behavioral counselor. That's true, right? We would get off an airplane. We'd come through reverse SRP. We would have filled out the pre-deployment health assessment, and we'd have answered those questions I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And then during the reverse SRP, we'd go and there'd be a behavioral health guy there, and he would have to stamp our paperwork, and he would say, hey, I looked at your PHA. I don't see anything that strikes me as requiring us to talk, but is there anything on your mind? And you'd be like, you look at your watch, you'd be like, no, I got nothing. Because if I say something, you're going to talk to me, and I'm not going to be able to see my spouse, my family. I'm not going to be able to go back to the barracks and play, X whatever games there are. And so we always said no. Well, I didn't want that option. And so I told the guys, I said, listen, what I want to do is I want every soldier in the regiment to, from brand new private to, old colonel, we are all going to sit in a 30-minute counseling session. And you can't leave for 30 minutes. You have to be in the room. Now, I can't order you to say anything, but I can order that your place of duty for 30 minutes is inside that room. And what we did was we incorporated the surge of military family life counselors. We met, and we did it virtually because we were in Afghanistan, with all the counselors, and we said, hey, listen, you're gonna have a person for 30 minutes. They can't leave your room. So they can't walk in and you say, you got anything you want to talk about? And they go, no. And you're like, okay, thanks, then leave. They have to be in that room for 30 minutes with you. And my view is, if you're good counselors, that in that 30 minutes, people are going to talk. And so we took time, and it took us about 4 months. We got the entire regiment through these 30-minute sessions. And what we found was the sessions didn't go 30 minutes. The sessions would go 45 minutes. And then the counselor would have to say, gosh, I hate to cut you off, but I've got another appointment coming. And so every member of the regiment went through a counseling session. So at the end of, we came back, I was back home for a few months, and then I PCS'd. And so I changed command, and I'm with my wife. We're in Vilseck, Germany. My wife and I were going to take the train down to Munich, meet our daughter and my dad down there, and fly back to the States. And my wife and I are at the train station in Nuremberg, getting ready to get on a train, 2 hours after the change of command. And she says, well, what do you think? And I said, Faye, I said, I never said a thing about this while I was in command. And I know that there's a bunch of luck involved in what I'm about to say. But in the entire time in brigade command, we didn't have a single suicide, not one suicide.
Wow.
And I said, again, I can't, I'm telling you, I know there's some luck to that. I know that we got lucky in some cases, and every case, every organization is a little different. But I got to believe that at some point there were people that might have been in a situation where they were despondent. And some of those people must have reached out to the things that we were talking about and learning. Yeah. And I'd like to believe that some of that helped with us getting through that. So I leave the regiment, and then I get lucky enough to come to 1st Infantry Division. And when I was at 2CR, I had worked for the USER commander at the time, Lieutenant General Don Campbell, who at the very beginning of my command, I told General Campbell I wanted to do all this, and he told me run. He said, hey, run, go, execute. And then a few weeks after we started, I was contacted by the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research, and they said, hey, we know what you're doing over there. General Campbell had explained to us what you're doing. We'd like to come out and follow you. And so the WARE team had come out and followed us over the course of my time in command, and actually several months after. And the results that they found, in every case, people had improved from the beginning of the program to the end. And some of those were minor, but some of them were really big changes. A lot of it was associated with trust, and I'll come back to that in a minute. So the senior research analyst was a woman named Dr. Amy Adler. And so when I found out I was coming to 1st Infantry Division, I contacted Dr. Adler and I said, hey, I want to do the same thing at 1ID that we executed at the 2nd Cavalry Regiment, but I want to do it on steroids. And I said, do you think there's any chance that WARE would be interested in joining it? And so I arrived at 1ID on 14 August, and I told my chief of staff and the team, I said, hey, here's what I want to do. I want to take one day every 10th morning, and I want to do these resilience sessions, and I want to implement a wellness check, a counseling program immediately. And it took us a while, and in the process, it took us about 2.5 months to get it launched. And in the process of that, that's when FORSCOM began the foundational days. So we consume or subsumed that into the program. Sure. And then 3 Corps, as 3 Corps was getting after people first, 3 Corps created their people first action weeks. So we pulled that into the program as well. So that's how we got those two. So the other piece, I guess, is because we're at a division post and because I'm the senior mission commander, we really can do what we did earlier on steroids. And so we created the Victory Wellness Leaders Guide. The Victory Wellness Leaders Guide is meant to provide leaders at echelon number one, an understanding of wellness and what we're trying to do. It describes the program and those 4 facets of the program. And then it breaks down by dimension of strength. We still use those pillars here, breaks those down and gives you the resources available. That's awesome. Other thing it does, and we use the portal here, is it takes best practices. So if you're a company commander and you're working on spiritual strength and you do a program where, that's so impactful and it's great, that battalion commander, brigade commander says, hey, Captain Johnson, that thing was great. The way you guys executed that was great. Drop your CONOP on the portal. And then we incorporate some of those into our Victory Wellness Leaders Guide, again, to give commanders, they're busy. These company commanders are so busy, to make something that's at their fingertips so they can say, hey, First Sergeant, I think we really ought to work on our family wellness because we're getting ready to deploy. We want our families to be stronger. Hey, let's jump on the portal and see what we've got. or to turn to their MRTs that they have in their companies and unleash their MRTs and say, hey, listen, I want you to increase the individual strength and resilience of us as it relates to the social dimension of strength. Create me a program that does that, and I'll give you every other Tuesday morning to be able to do it and do it. And then on the adding I told you it's a long story, Ashley. Adding
You're fine.
adding the unit cohesion piece to this on Fridays. What we try to do on Fridays is we, again, stealing from ForceCom, right? And some of this we were told we would do. So on Fridays we start every foundational day starts with unit sports or a unit competition, and so it could be flag football. It could be a weightlifting competition where teams are grouped together in total weight, whatever, but it has to be unit competition. And then from that, we go into, during the course of that day, we do barracks inspections and we do counseling. But the other thing we do is we break into smaller groups and we have difficult conversations about difficult topics. If you think about it, if I come from Central Iowa and I've got two brothers who are policemen and my father was a policeman, there's nothing that police can do that's wrong in my view. Well, if I come from somewhere else in the country where I had the exact opposite experience,
Sure.
Police don't do anything right, and I'm in the same squad with the kid from Iowa, we've got some things between us.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do is have conversations about the George Floyd verdict, to have conversations about the 6th January insurrection, to have conversations about the transgender policy or about sexual assault, to incorporate the things that are getting at us in the Army in an effort to break down walls between men and women in the same organization.
It's amazing.
With the thought that if we break down these walls, we make ourselves stronger. So we incorporate that on the foundational days. So again, the Victory Wellness mornings are about individuals. Those Fridays are about making every one of us stronger. And then again, we've got so Walter Reed, Army Institute of Research, that's been following us from the onset. And so every quarter they pull a tranche of data to give us an idea if we're being successful, if we need to adjust left or right. I told you it was a long story. I think I used up all your time.
It's okay.
And listen, I'm not worried about my next meeting. I'll talk about whatever you want to talk about for as long as you want. So,
Thank you.
And I'll figure out my next meeting. So anyways, go ahead.
Well, so, you're talking about the counseling, and mental health and behavioral health is still so taboo, it seems, even though it shouldn't be. Did you have any pushback on these wellness checks, or what has... But what has come of that, though? I mean, can you talk about I'm sure there's been positive feedback too.
I'll tell you, the wellness checks, and here's the one thing I'll tell you about the overall program, wellness, Victory Wellness. This, some people, when I first got here, people are like, oh, this is about, you're trying to get after suicide. Or this is a flash in a pan, this is, because listen, what a time to come into Division Command and want to get after things like this, right? The Chief of Staff of the Army is all about people.
Yeah.
The ForceCom commander is all about people, and my boss, the 3 Corps commander, is all about people. So I got so much rope when I got here in terms of my ability to get out and execute. And I'm going to come back to the wellness check piece. The hardest part of this, right? Because you've got people who really believe. There are 3 types of people in my view. There's someone that really believes in this because they've seen it work in their own life, right? I'm one of those. Yeah. They've seen it work in their own life. There's someone who's going to do it because they're like, what the hell? I'll try it, we'll see what happens. And then there's somebody that's going to do it because we're making them do it. Hey, listen, I don't care which group you're in. I'd love you to be in the first group. And my view is that if you stay with this and you participate, that you move from those second and third group, you move into the first group. And so at the very beginning, if you were to like figure out the ratios, at the very beginning, there aren't as many people in that first group. There are a lot of people in that third group, and they push against you. And I appreciate people coming and checking my work. And so I had people that were like, hey, you can't afford to, spend as much time. You can't take a Tuesday morning away or a Friday away. And I'm like, okay, well, listen, I'm going to do it. Hang in there. I'm going to do it. And again, I had all sorts of umbrella coverage from my senior leadership. So I was able to get after that. But now there are some people, right? There are some people that they only associate when you talk about people first, or we talk about wellness. They think that must mean, I'm getting time off. You're giving me time off. Listen, taking care of people is about making us individually stronger, make our team stronger, but it's also about making sure we are trained to do what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
If we want to take care of people, we got to make sure that we're preparing them for the rigors of combat and that they have all the skills necessary to come back. That's taking care of people. And so, what we've tried to tell people from the very beginning is, listen, this is not separate from operational readiness. I mean, they're two sides of the same coin. If you've got strong, resilient people and strong teams, they are better fighters in combat. And so those are the same thing. We're trying to get after that. So back to your question about wellness checks. So when we first started talking about counseling, people are like, oh, hey, listen, you can't make me go to a counseling session. No, that's not true. I can't make you talk in a counseling session, but I can make you go to a counseling session, right? It's not illegal, immoral, or unethical, so we can do that part. Then people are like, well, we can't keep track. I mean, there were so many reasons this wasn't going to work. And so I said, hey, listen, let me tell you, there are three things we want to do with the wellness checks. One, we want to introduce you to counseling. I didn't know what it was about until I was a senior lieutenant colonel. If I had known what counseling was about as a lieutenant, I might have been a better lieutenant, captain, major before that. They would have offered me perspectives. Listen, counseling isn't about, when we think of counseling, we think, well, you must have a bunch of problems. Well, hey, maybe you do have some problems, but you also may have some areas in which you're thriving that we can help you thrive even more. We can tweak things a little bit. And these wellness checks allow us to do that. The other thing we're trying to get after is we're trying to help people for that reason I was talking about. So that's number two. And then the third one is we're trying to get after stigma. If we all have to go to counseling, then nobody says, hey, go seek counseling, and people are concerned that they're going to, be seen doing that.
Sure.
We have because of the way we've done behavioral health in the past, if I go up to the fourth floor of our hospital here and someone sees me, although I don't think they'll say anything, there's the possibility that someone would say, hey, I saw Sims up at IAC today. Is he okay? And with this,
absolutely,
nobody says, hey, I saw Sims down at the Soldier Family Assistance Center. He must be doing a wellness check. Is he all right? Nobody says that because we're all going to get wellness checks.
Yeah.
The crazy thing is, I did my second wellness check 2 weeks ago. And, my first one was last December, so I was due for another. So I did mine. Went an hour and 15 minutes. And I'm talking to the counselor. And I said, hey, just now you've been doing this for about a year. I said, how many people have come in here and not said a word to you? One person. She's probably seen 1,500 people. One person has gone in there and not said a word.
Wow.
When people go in there with the view that they're not going to say anything, invariably they're the ones that stay the longest. Because they come in and they sit down, they got their arms crossed, they're angry, and they're looking down on the ground. And the counselor says, hey, how you doing? And they're like, fine. And they look at their watch. Counselor looks at his or her watch and he says, all right, well, hey, we got 29 minutes and 45 seconds left. What do you think? I mean, I think the Chiefs got a good chance to win the Super Bowl. And the guy looks up and he says, Chiefs, listen, if you're not talking about the Colts, I don't even want to talk football. And boom, an hour later, the counselor says, hey, listen, I don't want to cut you off, but I got another appointment.
Right.
And the guy or gal goes, oh my gosh, something happened to me over the course of the last 60 minutes. I feel strangely good, and I've been tricked into counseling, but it wasn't that bad. So we end up introducing people to it. What we found is that our MFLACs that work up at ACS in the past, and I've been at other places like this too, in many cases they're underutilized because they're at ACS and they're waiting on someone to come see them, and a lot of people don't know about the MFLACs.
Right.
Well, now our MFLACs are inundated at ACS.
That's amazing.
And they're working from day, when they come in to when they go home because people know about them. The reason we use MFLACs, and I'll get to this one for you too, the reason we use MFLACs and not our behavioral health docs and not our chaplains. So our behavioral health docs are busy men and women. And I did not want to take them out of their day-to-day work to have them do 30 to 60-minute counseling sessions. I didn't want to do it. I couldn't afford it. And I don't have enough of them to do what we're doing already. And I wanted to keep them free for in-stride crises, to continue to get after things that are going on in people's daily lives that are tragic or otherwise. Chaplains, same reason. I want our chaplains focused down and inside their units. I want them talking to soldiers in the motor pools, talking to them in the battalion and company areas. I want them to be able to focus on those individuals in their daily actions. Well, MFLAX, the other piece about MFLAX is MFLAX take no notes, so there's no record. The only record that you do a wellness check is the check next to your name that you completed it in calendar year 21 or calendar year 22. There are no notes that follow, Major General Sims when he leaves after an hour and 15 minutes. I don't need to be worried that someone may come back and say, hey, you can't get a security clearance, which doesn't happen very often. I don't have to be worried about not being able to get a job. And so far, it's worked out pretty well. Like I said, we've done about 13,000 checks now, coming up on 1 year. The 1 year mark's here in about two weeks. We did a little kind of a soft opening in December of 2020, and they've gone pretty well. Back to WARE. What WARE has found in talking to folks is that these are having an effect. I mean, they're absolutely having an effect. And again, like it was before, some of that effect is small. Some of those increases in wellness are small, but some of the things are gigantic. So if you take an individual, if you take a leader, an individual in an organization in which leaders are not just endorsing the program or telling people to do it, but those leaders are participating in the program, those organizations have a 30% higher level of unit trust and unit cohesion. 30% higher.
That's amazing.
When you think about it, at first you're like, wow, that's crazy. But then you think about it. If I'm a good leader, I'm a company commander or a platoon leader, platoon sergeant, I don't create a PT program and then sit back at my desk and drink coffee and tell my soldiers, go execute PT. I'm out there doing it. Bad leaders, on the other hand, they don't.
Right.
And so it's just the same with wellness. Those leaders that are participating, they're soldiers, they think they're good leaders. And it just so happens that the people who've embraced it, they're doing really well. I'll give you a great example. I've got a battalion that's currently deployed. It's not probably not the best battalion in the division, because I'd hate to label one of them, but it's pretty darn good. This organization incorporated the wellness not just in the garrison environment, but in the training environment, and they've incorporated the wellness in the deployed environment. In that organization, in the 18 months I've been here, which is about the same amount of time that commander's been there, they have had one suicidal ideation. One ideation.
Wow.
They haven't had an attempt. They haven't had a suicide. They've had one ideation in 18 months. The organization feels different when you're inside the organization. Like they care for one another. They deeply care for one another, and they are well trained. And this is a commander who he just gets it, and he understands that incorporation of this in all environments is important to making sure that his organization is strong in a combat environment. And the last thing I'd tell you, Ashley, before you ask me to shut up, is this is a program for everybody, right? This isn't a program. If I tell you, hey, we're doing this for our soldiers, most people will think E1 to E4. They chunk soldier down E1 to E4.
Yeah.
I consider myself a soldier, but if I say soldier, they'll think E1 to E4. This program is for E1 to 08. It's for our families. And the other piece is it's not for the 10% of people in the organization who are going through trials in life. Sure, it's for that 10%, but it's for the other 90% as well, with a thought that we're all going to end up in that 10% at some point, right? Our parents age and pass away. We have problems in our marriages. Our children are going through things. We get personally hurt. Whatever that is, at some point, we're all in that 10%. And we want to make those folks stronger and bring them out of that 10%. But we also want that 90% who are just crushing it to crush it even more. And so the program is for everybody here to continue to get after it. So I'm sorry. Like I said, I could talk about this for a long time.
And I could ask you probably hundreds of questions. And just the things that you're saying, I think what you guys are doing in introducing so many soldiers to counseling that would never have gone otherwise unless this wasn't there, I think is amazing, because I think it's scary to say, hey, I need to go talk to somebody. But also including the fact that all of these soldiers now have these resources. So if something does come up, they know who to go to, they know who to talk to, they know who to get their buddy to. I think is phenomenal.
I'm biased, Ashley, right? I mean, I believe in it. I'm in that first group, and I think we pulled a bunch of people into that first group. I think at the beginning of this, we were, as I would go out, and part of this has been about relentless BFC, right? With my senior leaders getting out and checking things out. If I went down during a Victory Wellness morning, and my every Tuesday morning is blocked because we do half the division every other Tuesday or every Tuesday. Just because we consume the resources. It was crazy how, anyways, I'd go out if I went down and I walked into the battalion commander's office between 8:30 and 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning and he or she was in his office, I knew we had problems inside the battalion because they just didn't get it. I wanted them out and about and participating and seeing how these things were going.
Sure.
And I think we were probably doing it about 20% right at the beginning and 80% wrong. And over time, our leaders here are extraordinary. Over time, they have embraced and taken the program on and taken ownership of it. And now I think we've flipped that, right? I think we're about 80% right all the time and 20% who are still struggling to get it right. Some of that's newness, whatever. Some of it still they haven't bought in. But I do think it's helpful. I think, the proof is in the pudding, though, right? And so, I am really careful. Our results have been really good, right? And again, working with Dr. Adler to help us see ourselves, the results have been really, really good. Here's what I'll tell you. I am not getting on a soapbox about our stuff. And the reason I don't is because we are not unlike anybody else. We will have and have had tragedies occur.
Sure.
And my fear is that if you get up and just start beating the drum about how great things are, you end up with people who are looking for reasons to tell you it's broken. And if we have a few real tragic cases, I don't want that to derail the program because I know it's working.
Yeah.
I just know it's working. And so anyways, I think, honestly, of the program, the strongest thing in terms of having legs to me would be the wellness checks. It seems to me that we ought to all be seeing a counselor about once a year. Yeah. If for nothing else, it gives you 30 to 60 minutes to just relax and talk to somebody that has nothing to do with what you do.
Who will listen to you.
Perspective. Yeah. Right. And listen, my wife is fantastic, right? She tells me, she gives me great advice. So does my command sergeant major. But there are things it's nice to talk to somebody that doesn't have any connection to you now and then.
Absolutely.
And I think if anything has legs, I hope that would be it. The other aspects, I would hope, like the Army, I would hope that we recognize, listen, the Army is about people. It's always been about people.
Yeah.
I mean, we've created these blocks of time to focus on our people. But you shouldn't have to focus on your people just on Tuesday mornings and Fridays.
Absolutely.
We ought to be focused on our people, 24/7 from the moment we arrive at the office in the morning or in the training area until we're complete. And that's the kind of culture I think that the chief and General Garrett, they're trying to get us to. And I think we're having an effect in that regard.
So what do you say to skeptics who might say, oh, you're putting all of this effort into people and all of this time into people. Are you compromising true, real readiness?
I point to examples like the battalion I was talking to you before. I think that battalion, and again, I'm not going to rate them number one, but by God, they're up there, number 1, 2, or 3. And I tell you no. I think people who say, listen, the reason that we're not as trained is because we're spending too much time on people, that doesn't make any sense to me. It makes no sense. To me, that's a cop-out. And listen, like I said, I've had people push back on me, in and out of the organization who say, hey, you need to spend more time concentrating on warfighting. I don't think we ought to be taking any time away from warfighting. But I think as we're working warfighting, we ought to be talking about, hey, Sergeant Sims, hey, man, when I'm sitting in a chow line in the field environment, why can't I be talking to Sergeant Sims about his family?
Yeah.
Why can't I be talking to Sergeant Sims about, ways that, he can be stronger in different things? I mean, in the end, it's about connection, right? Yeah. I mean, I read this great book. It was a recommendation from the CG of at 10th Mountain, General Beagle, a book called Rethinking Suicide.
Yes.
And I don't know if you've read that. Have you read that?
I haven't read it fully.
It's a really good book. The first half, right? I mean, it's a guy by the name of Dr. Craig
Yeah.
Bryan, and the first half is all it's science, right? I mean, he's a scientist. So
Yeah.
once I got through the science, that was good. The back half of the book, though, it basically comes down the way I read it. It comes down to creating, strong people who are connected and who are thriving in life.
Yeah.
And if you can build those things, then those types of people are less likely to want to hurt themselves.
Right.
I think that's what Victory Wellness is. And again, if those people feel good about themselves, they feel good about what they're doing, they're going to fight better in combat. Yeah. And they're going to want to make sure that the men and women around them are well cared for and fight well too. Imagine an environment, and I ask people to think about why they join the Army, and if they've been in the Army for a while, to think about the best units they've been in. I don't know why every individual did it, but I do know this. In my time in the Army, my best units have been organizations where, people really valued me, where they respected me, where they deeply cared about me personally. Those are the units that have been the best units in my career. And I think that's, maybe that's aspirational in some cases. But I don't know why we wouldn't be shooting to create those types of organizations
Agreed.
everywhere we go.
I think everybody wants to feel appreciated. And
yeah.
I mean, we're all people, we are all going through our own things. And I think just to be able to realize that about each other and respect each other is so important.
People are like, well, are you creating soldiers who aren't very tough? I've had people talk to me about that. I was watching this thing this weekend. The National Football League is working to get rid of stigma associated with emotional health care.
Right.
And the people that were talking about it were these amazing football players, right? I was watching this one guy from the Colts who's an all-pro linebacker who may be one of the toughest human beings I've seen in my life. And he was talking about the impact of counseling on him and how it made him stronger. I think that's what we're going for here too.
Yeah.
I think if you know yourself, if you come up with ways to make you stronger individually, I don't know how you're not tougher.
Yeah.
So.
There's a guy who plays for the Atlantic Falcons, Hayden. I cannot remember his last name right now, but he tells his story about how he tried to kill himself. And it's absolutely amazing. You could probably just Google Falcons and Hayden and it would come up, but it's fantastic. Yeah. But I know that we are over time, but I have one more question.
Sure.
So what's next with this program? Where are you going from here?
Well, we all get 2 hours, or we all generally get a couple years somewhere to do something. And, my hope would be that the program continues after I leave. I think, listen, this isn't my program. I came in here with a desire to do it, but the beauty of this program has been what the organization has made it. Really, and when I mentioned, we were going to do it on steroids at One ID, that's what happened, right? The staff is world class. And so they took this thing and built the program. This is not my program. This is our program. And it's not just One ID, it's Fort Riley. It's the Fort Riley One ID program. I would hope that bits of this seep into other places by people who leave here who are lieutenants and saw it, or sergeant's first class, and they take it where they're going. I would love to think that it will continue here at Fort Riley. If there was one thing, like I said earlier, that I would hope would be sustained would be the wellness checks.
Yeah.
Because I think the wellness checks have tentacles into everything else we do.
Agreed.
So I don't know. I'll watch from afar a little bit, I guess, but we'll see.
All right. Well, it sounds like an amazing program. And just, I think the work that you guys are doing is going to seep out into the rest of the Army. Before I let you go, is there anything else you want to add that we haven't touched on?
No, Ashley, again, I think I just reiterate, what a great time to be in the Army, to be able to do this kind of thing. We've just got, we've got leaders at Echelon who get it, who understand how important human beings are. Not just our men and women in uniform, but their families as well. We actually next week we're kicking off the Big Red 1 Year Family, a year-long celebration of our families, with strength and resilience of our families being one, education of our families in terms of resources on the installation and otherwise, and then finally just appreciation of those families. We're going to start that next week on the 12th. With the thought that if our families are strong, that it increases our operational readiness.
Yeah.
And so, having the ability to get after that here has been a lot of fun. But man, what a good group of men and women it is here at the Big Red One. And they are about getting after and making things better. And so I appreciate the chance to come on here and talk with you a little bit this morning. Duty first.
Well, thank you again, sir. Thank you for the time. I know we went over, but I really appreciate this. And I think it was a really great conversation.
Very nice to talk to you.
All right, you too.